And now we head a little bit to the west. From Montreal, we go to Toronto, and Zach Payne joining me, and a painful exit for the Toronto Maple Leafs out of the playoffs as they lose to the eventual Stanley Cup champions. But you had them on the ropes. How does it feel having a little bit of hindsight on it?
I mean, is there an answer aside from still bad? Like,
No.
at the end of the day, the Leafs, and this has been the case with the Toronto Maple Leafs for years, the knock on the Leafs has never been that they are a bad team. The knock on the Leafs is that when it matters, they never play up to their potential. And that happened again. They actually do manage to take care of business against the Ottawa Senators, but you should have. Ottawa was a much worse opponent in the playoffs compared to what Toronto usually faces. The second they face a team that is actually threatening, even though they do start off hot, like you mentioned, they get up to the 2-0 series lead. They're up 3-1 in game three. And then Paul Maurice, he sees that Austin Matthews is dominating the Barkov matchup. Quick little switch, puts Lundell on Matthews and Barkov on Tavares, and the series was over. Just like that. William Nylander and John Tavares suddenly forgot how to score, and the Leafs just completely imploded.
Well, I think that's a pretty harsh but fair analysis of the Toronto Maple Leafs playoffs. And there's only up to go from here, but it feels weird when you're saying that every single year, right? Like, you can only have so much optimism for so long, and we are starting to see the shakeup of that core, as obviously we're recording this prior to Mitch Marner either getting traded or who knows what's going on. Calls for tampering to be investigated by the NHL. How does all this chaos kind of boil down for you right now?
So the short version is it's beyond past time to shake things up with this roster. For far too long, as you know, everyone in the NHL knows by now, the Leafs have been invested in this core four experiment, allocating at $11 million to four forwards. You know, I know Marner comes in a touch under 11. Nylander for a long time was under 11 as well, but so much money allocated to four forwards. And now that's gone. I know John Tavares re-signed, which we'll talk about, but he's not a core member anymore because of how much less money he's making. And Mitch Marner is obviously the big one because he's gone. He's going to be leaving, whether or not it's with Vegas or if another suitor pops up and offers him more money on July 1st. Who knows, but Mitch Marner will not be a Toronto Maple Leaf next season. So right there, that is the shakeup that we've been waiting probably 4 years for. Ever since 2021, it's been time to shake up the core because we knew, A, it wasn't working, and B, with the flat cap environment caused by the pandemic, you just can't justify allocating the dollars the way the Leafs did. So it's time for something new, and I'm glad that we're at least going to see a bit of a shakeup.
But as much as things change, they stay the same. John Tavares signs a 4-year deal, or is it 4 years? My
Yep.
brain's full of soup. So a 4-year, 4.5, just south of that.
4.38 per year.
Yeah, just south. Rounding, it works in my brain. But so what do you think of that deal for John Tavares? It's one of those deals that does carry over the 35 threshold.
That's an absolute sweetheart of a deal. He scored 38 goals last season. Is he going to do that again? No. But is he a pretty safe bet for 25 to 30? Yes. And with the cap going up in the last 2 years of that deal, assuming he's still on the Leafs roster, that is completely manageable. That'll be the equivalent of like a $3 million deal today, a few years from now with the cap exploding. And the worst case scenario is if he's bad, 2 years from now, he only has a 5-team no-trade list, so you could just dump that money if you have to. Tavares, he's never been a fleet-of-foot player. He's not very fast. He's never been. That's not his game. And so he has a better chance than most to age rather decently. Is he going to regress? Absolutely. He is going to continue to decline because Father Time is undefeated. But to say that he's just going to fall off a cliff, I think is a bit premature.
So, and until Mitch officially moves, we know he's no longer a Leaf. We don't know if the Leafs are going to get a return for him because the rumor over the last 24, 48 hours was there was a deal in place to go to Vegas. But as of right now, we're talking that it might be falling apart. And as I said, there's been calls for it to be an investigation by the league for tampering. And I don't think this is the first time the GMs have said they need to investigate Vegas. I think it's the first time it's gone to the media that that tampering investigation needs to take place.
Yeah, so this is from Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts. This came out Sunday morning. This is what his summary of the situation is. This has been a situation that's been developing for at least a year, going back to last summer when the Leafs were trying to trade Mitch Marner for a package including Shea Theodore. And at the trade deadline, when the Leafs wanted Mikko Rantanen, there was a 3-team trade in the works that would have sent Rantanen to Toronto, Marner to Vegas, and some sort of package of picks and prospects to Carolina. Obviously, that didn't happen because of Marner's no move clause, but the Vegas approached the Leafs at the draft and the combine and told the Leafs that if they make Marner's rights available before July 1st, they would be interested. Those conversations have began over the past week and obviously progressed to the point where we're getting reported packages. Vegas wants to do this to eliminate the opportunity for Marner to speak to other teams, even if the 8-year contract isn't going to happen. It's reported that it's only going to be like a 4-year deal for Marner, but Vegas is rightfully very paranoid that Marner is just going to go to the highest bidder, so they want to make sure that they get in the door first and lock him up before July 1st hits. Now, we know that Nick Roy is one of the names that has been talked about going back to the Leafs. Nick Hague is another. The reported package is both of those players and a draft pick, which would be honestly kind of insane for just a UFA's rights. I don't know if I've seen a package of multiple players and a pick for the rights to a player, but if it happens, it happens. I'm assuming it won't be quite that lucrative for the Leafs. But this is the important thing. There's talk that if Marner goes to Vegas, the Leafs are going to go after Vegas for tampering unless they make a sign and trade deal and send players or picks to the Leafs in exchange. Brad Treliving is extorting the Vegas Golden Knights, plain and simple. But Friedman also reporting the league is looking to make an example out of someone for tampering. There's kind of been this undertone of tampering around free agency for years, and it sounds like the league is looking for an excuse to crack down on it.
And of course, it centers around Toronto. But anyways, I digress. The Leafs went.
If the shoe was on the other foot, it would absolutely happen. Like if it was Toronto that was being accused of tampering, there would absolutely be something that happens. The Leafs being involved is just, I think it's more coincidence. I don't think other teams would probably go after Vegas as well because other Marner suitors would also probably target Vegas for this.
Yeah, but of course it involves Toronto because everything revolves around Toronto. It's mostly just a joke, but. Let's now talk about the draft because that happened. Leafs go into it not with a first rounder. There's a pretty big consensus that their second round pick of Tanis Koblar, I hope I'm saying that name correctly, was a bit of a reach. A lot of people saying he has a slight chance to play in the NHL. But then they go with Tyler Hopkins out of the Kingston Frontenacs. People say that's a little bit better, but as we all know, I talked about it with Andrew, these later round draft picks are all lottery balls. Like, they're just a shot at an asset at the end of the day. Nobody can read the future. As much as I joke, I have the crystal ball here because I did predict who the Flames would pick. And I predicted the Rats in the playoffs taking over. But what do you think about the draft? Like, I know you're not a prospects guy. Do you feel like going with these forwards and centers kind of makes sense with the way the Leafs need to continue to build?
My take on the NHL draft is that you shouldn't be drafting for needs anyways, because the nature of how hockey prospects develop and their development curves, it is a longer process compared to other sports. So drafting for need just doesn't really make sense. You just got to draft good players and figure the rest out later. The Leafs go with a good amount of centers in this draft. Cool. Like right now they need a center, but that doesn't matter right now. 3 to 4 years from now, maybe some of these guys start to hit, and the Leafs, maybe they still need a center in 3 to 4 years, and that would be great, but it's just too hard to project needs 3 to 4 years out like that. The main takeaway from the Leafs draft is the players that they selected are all huge. They really emphasize size. Not a single player under 6'1" was taken in this draft. Now, the Luke Koblar pick and the Tyler Hopkins pick, those are both top 100 picks. I'm of the mind that if you have a top 100 pick, those guys should play in the NHL at some point in their careers. Again, it's a long ways out, but it is what it is. And then the rest of the guys, like after pick 100, I hope one hits of that. Like if you have the top 100 guys hit and one of the later round picks hit, that's great. I will say that Matthew Lakar, the Kitchener forward,
Yeah.
what a weird, terrible pick because his only asset, they basically drafted the Kitchener enforcer. Very odd pick, but there are also a few undrafted guys that they could go after as well. But all of these guys that the Leafs took, big emphasis on size, big emphasis on playing with that edge, with a bit more grit and physicality. That's something that the Leafs have emphasized this offseason, is trying to fix the mentality in the locker room. Bringing in prospects that have that mentality, again, just means that as you continue to hopefully fix your team culture, the guys that are coming in also are going to fit that as well.
A very Brad truculent draft for the Toronto Maple Leafs, trying to answer the question of how to get past those darn Florida Panthers in the East. Thank you so much, Zach, and enjoy the rest of the offseason. Hopefully you have fingernails left after whatever happens. But before we actually say goodbye, I'll give you one last chance. What hole needs to be filled for the Toronto Maple Leafs in free agency?
Hopefully not $9 million to Brad Marchand, but in all seriousness, I think just getting a couple more options at middle six forward. I know former Flame Andrew Mangiapane's name has been floated out there. Players like that can play on the second line if need be, can drive a third line a little bit more if need be. Other options just to have more flexibility. I really do like the Oilers model of just having so many centers that you can try 1,000 different combinations if something doesn't work. So I just need some more legitimate middle six options compared to what the Leafs have employed over the last several years.
So is a name like Jack Roslovic somebody that kind of intrigues you as that middle six guy? There's not a lot of centers available. The only other one really,
as a middle six guy, though. I view him more as a bottom six guy.
That's fair enough. But for us here at Game Over, thank you so much for breaking down Toronto's offseason, and we'll see how free agency goes and see where Mitch Marner ends up landing.